Now, don't be alarmed if you don't see this on your lecture notes, because it isn't on your lecture notes. But what you're looking at are a list of all of the standing committees, or what I'm calling the full committees, in the House and in the Senate. So on the House side, which is on the left, you can see there's an Agricultural Committee, an Appropriations Committee, an Armed Services Committee, Budget, Education, and Labor. I'm not going to read them all. You don't need to know them all. But if you Google committees in Congress, you'll find this page and you'll find links to each of them. And on the right-hand side are the committees in the Senate. So there's the one we've been looking at, the Agricultural, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, and the Appropriations Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and Banking and Housing and Urban Affairs Committee, and so on. If you take a moment and look back and forth between the two, if you're able to do so, what you'll see is that a lot of the committees match up. So on the House side, you have the Agricultural Committee. On the Senate side, you have the Agricultural, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee. On the House side, you have an Appropriations Committee. On the Senate side, you have an Appropriations Committee. But they don't match up perfectly. There are more committees in the House than there are in the Senate, in part because there's more people, and there are just different committees. So, but this is I just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of committees, full committees, or what on this they call the standing committees, are present in the House and in the Senate. And with that, we'll get back to the lecture. Or more accurately, what I should have said was, we'll get back to the lecture notes, because now what you're looking at is in the actual lecture notes. And so I want to start off with a definition first. I'm going to be talking about the difference between majoritarian institutions and non-majoritarian institutions. And I'll let you know ahead of time that one of the things I'm going to be pointing out is that the House is a majoritarian institution and the Senate is a non-majoritarian institution. So with that, let's go into the definitions. We characterize an institution as being majoritarian if the way the institution works is that the majority rules. Like, so for example, if we were in a classroom, like a regular classroom, or even in this one, even our virtual classroom, this is not a majoritarian institution, what your relationship to me. We don't get to vote as a group and decide what's going to be on the exam or what I'm going to cover or how tests are going to be graded. This is not a majoritarian institution. It is a benevolent dictatorship, right? I'm in charge. Or if it was going to be a majoritarian institution, the way it would work is that all of you would get one vote and I get one more vote than all of you, right? So this isn't majoritarian. A majoritarian institution is one in which the majority rules. Conversely, a non-majoritarian institution is one in which the majority does not rule. And so that's what you're going to find out in the next set of lectures, videos, is that the House is a majoritarian institution and the Senate is not. So let's first talk about the House of Representatives. Now, there are certain benefits to being in the majority party in both the House and the Senate. I want to explain what I mean by the majority party. I know I did this in another video, but I want to do it again. The majority party is the party in which there are more members of that party than the other party. Now, once again, in our political system, the way it works is we have two parties. We have the Democrats and we have the Republicans. That may make you very, very sad, but that's the real world that we live in. And so as a political scientist, we have to talk about the real world we live in. So the majority party is simply the party that has a majority of members in it. In 2022, in February, the Democrats are the majority party in the House. It's a very small majority, right? I don't know who the majority party is going to be when you're watching this video. So you have the majority party And then you have the minority party. That's the party that doesn't have a majority of members. So the reason I'm bringing this all up is that there are certain benefits to being in the majority party in the House. One, the majority party has more members on every committee and every subcommittee. So in the Agricultural Committee in the House of Representatives, if the Democrats are the majority party, there will be more Democrats on that committee than there will be Republicans on that committee. And that winds up being important because if a bill is being discussed or debated and all the Democrats vote in favor of it and all the Republicans vote against it, the Democrats are going to win every time. Right? If you're in the majority party, you're going to have more members on every committee and every subcommittee. And so if the parties stick together, the majority party is always going to win. Additionally, the chairman and chairwomen or chairpersons, the chairmanship of all the committees and all the subcommittees is a member of the majority party. So when the Democrats are a majority in the House of Representatives, every chairperson of every committee and every subcommittee is a Democrat. And as I mentioned previously in the last lecture video, being the chairperson is really important because the chairperson gets to control the agenda. And so they get to decide what bills are and aren't going to be discussed, which bills have a chance and don't have a chance of passing. And again, this is in every committee and every subcommittee in the House. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether there's one more Democrat than a Republican or one more Republican than a Democrat. It doesn't matter the size of the majority, right? Whichever party has a majority in the House controls all the chairmanships of all the committees and all the subcommittees. Now, here's some terminology that you're going to need to know as we move along. In a committee, you'll have a chairman or chairwoman, right? The chair of the committee. And that person will always be from the majority party. Then there's also somebody called the ranking member. The ranking member is the head person for the minority party in that committee and the subcommittee. So for example, going back to the Agricultural Committee, because that's what we're going to use as our example all the way through this, the chairman will be, or chairperson will be a Democrat. The ranking member will be a Republican now because the Democrats have the majority, right? When you're watching this video, that's could very well be different, but the idea will be the same. Right now, in February of 2022, because the Democrats are in the majority, the chairman and chairpersons of all the subcommittees are Democrats, and the ranking members are the lead person for the Republican Party in every subcommittee as well. Okay? Now, ranking members don't have a lot of power, especially in the House of Representatives, so it's important to keep that in mind. But I just want you to be familiar with that term ranking member. Now, this is all leading up to a big point, and that is most votes in the House of Representatives simply require a simple majority. Oh, that was terribly phrased. Simply require a simple majority. I could edit this out, but I'm not going to. You'll just have to understand that sometimes I'm not very articulate. Most votes in the House require a simple majority. This is true in committees, this is true in subcommittees, and this is true on the floor. And remember, the floor is when the entire House of Representatives is voting. And so what that means is that if the majority party stays unified, and by unified, what I mean is they all vote together. If the majority party stays unified, the majority party never loses in the House of Representatives. Or put differently, the minority party always loses in the House of Representatives. That's one of the reasons why in the House, frequently you don't see compromise because the majority party doesn't have to compromise with the Senate. I mean, with the minority party. They can pass anything they want as long as all their members stick together. So there's no need for them to compromise with the minority party. They just ram down the throats of the minority party whatever they want, and there's really nothing the minority party can do. Now, next we're going to go on to the Senate in the next video. And we're going to talk about the Senate being a non-majoritarian institution. But what you're going to notice are some similarities in the structure of the House and the Senate.